Hi, and welcome along to 98 Layout, the home of cricket chat on both YouTube and on the podcast, and of course on 98 FM, Phoenix 98 FM. Remember to subscribe, like this video, and follow us across all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we are there. This week, we're talking to Mr. George Dobell. He's written a really good article in the July edition of The Cricketer about Kevin Pietersen and his ideas for franchising county cricket. A really good chat. Let's get into it. The July edition of The Cricketer is out, as we've been mentioning several times now on the show. And one of the most interesting articles, in fact, there's lots of interesting articles and lots of people that are writing for this magazine that make even this show blush. But one of the more interesting pieces in this month's magazine is from our good old friend, George Dobell, who is analysing Kevin Pietersen's proposals for rebranding, a restructuring of county cricket. So you don't need to hear my voice to talk about this. Let's hear from George. George, welcome to 98 Real.
Thanks for having me back.
So for those that don't know, shall we start by just saying what Mr. Pietersen is proposing?
Yes, well, Kevin, inspired by whenever he sees some suboptimal cricket on the feeds across the championship or whatever else in the county game, tends to tweet about it and say, this is everything that's wrong, too many cricketers, got to franchise it. And the particular example that he took was Ben Stokes, who's really quite good at cricket, thrashing Josh Baker, who I think is 19, for 34 and over. And he was like, look at the standard of bowling. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was basically using that as an example of what is wrong with county cricket. And that bothered me a bit. I should say, first of all, that I like Kevin and I respect Kevin, and I respect the fact that he's prepared to have an opinion. I respect that he cares and he has that passion. And I think in the article I referred to him as a disruptor. He always was, in a wonderful way. He changed lots of things. I mean, I used to do a column with Graham Hick. And I remember Graham Hick, well, I didn't really. Graham wrote it himself, but we used to talk about it a bit each week. And I remember when Kevin switch hit Murali for 6 in a test match at Edgbaston. And Graham Hick genuinely was struggling to believe it. I think he told me that he had faced a whole series against Murali without scoring a run off him, which sounds like a remarkable thing. And I should probably check it before I say it, but I think that's what he said to me. And he was like, Graham Hick was obviously an incredible player, and he couldn't believe the talent and the bravery and all the rest of it that could result in this amazing shot. And that's been Kevin the whole way through. And as someone who, in particular in recent months, has had quite a bit of flack on social media, not least for the stuff related to Azim, I admire him for having the passion of his convictions. I really do. And with everything he's achieved, I think he deserves a fair hearing. But you knew there was one coming. But I thought it was really harsh to pick on Josh Baker. As I say, I think he's 19. He's learning his trade. He's bowling against a really good player, absolutely the top of his game. Who we've seen do that to, I don't know, Cummins. We've seen him do it to the best bowlers in the world. We've seen him win a World Cup final. We've seen him win tests. We've seen the man create miracles quite often. And actually, it's quite good that Josh Baker is learning his trade, playing for Worcestershire on an unhelpful surface. It wasn't a bad over. He didn't bowl any full tosses or long hops. He kept on trying to get Ben Stokes out. Just Ben Stokes kept hitting him for 4 or 6. 6, maybe. So I thought it was very harsh to pick on him as an example. But more to the point, I thought it was clumsy. So I suspect, well, he says, let's franchise county cricket as if that would help. Now, let's take that literally at first. Why would that help? Why would it help to just have different ownership? Is the ownership the problem? I suspect that's not what he means. And if it is what he means, he should remember that if you have a different ownership structure, if you have, basically shareholders, owners, they're probably going to be looking for a return beyond producing good players, hoping they're going to win your team, games and represent England with distinction. That's basically what you're hoping for as a county cricket member. As soon as you have you allow the game to be franchised, you have all sorts of other agendas, other motivations. And I think one of the ironies is, if county cricket was franchised, Kevin would have struggled to make it because he was a late developer, obviously a great player. But he didn't turn up in England as a great player. He turned up in England as a, second-rate spinner offie playing for Cannock, developed into a bit of a hacker, and then went from there into a really, really good, fantastic batter, as good as it gets. And he might not have had the chance to do that in a system with fewer teams, in a system which was less likely to invest time in a player. So that was one thing. The other thing was, would Ben Stokes be playing in a franchise system? Bearing in mind that he chose not to play at the IPL. Would that be an option if you were working in a franchise system where actually the franchise owners, they're increasingly they're the same people operating across countries? Sorry. But I suspect that Kevin didn't mean franchise in that way. I suspect he meant it a bit clumsily, and he just meant there should be fewer teams. Because lots of people think that. You hear it all the time. My good friend, and I mean that sincerely, Don Topley, says that all the time, says there isn't enough talent. It would be better if it was condensed. It would be the best be the best. And I get the logic, but it's flawed logic, because there is no finite amount of talent in society. If we give more players the chance to develop and impress, we will develop more players. And the example that is staring us in the face is Durham. The latest team to join the county championship has produced, well, the England captain for a start, but all those fast bowlers, Mark Wood, Steve Harmison, whoever else you want to mention, Potts, I suppose, being the latest, that maybe would have slipped through the net otherwise. And this is the thing that's so important that I want people to sort of think about, is that if we have all these centres of excellence around the country, if we have coaches going into communities, spotting, nurturing talent, giving them opportunities to play at professional level, we will develop more players. Now, is every county doing this to optimum at the moment? No, I can't pretend they are. But can that system work? Definitely. Can it work better than a franchise system? Yep. Are there advantages over cutting the number of teams and just shrinking the games? Yes, I passionately believe there are. But that was my issue with what Kevin said. But it comes from a position, genuinely, of great respect. And I admire him for having the courage to stick his neck up and having the passion to voice his opinions.
It has been a lot more, obviously we've had this kind of hiatus of people using social media as a vehicle for their opinions of all sorts, obviously since the whole Azim episode and various other bits and pieces that have gone on, and people that once were very, very vocal on social media, Michael Vaughan being another one, kind of retreated into their shell, probably to have a good think about what they were trying to do and what they were trying to achieve. But Kevin seems to have come back with a vengeance. I don't think he ever really went away. I think you're right in your assessment of him as a man, that he's always passionately believed in himself, and what he's doing is, in his opinion, is right. And the way he played when he first came on, I think his period of playing for England was a great period for English cricket. And I think we were a bit poorer when he went away, and there was a change in direction of the English team. But this time he does seem to be more widespread. I saw him on a Barmy Army chat podcast the other day talking about these ideas. What do you think? Do you think if we have less counties, it's going to improve? Is that the answer to the mess that we find ourselves in with red ball cricket?
No, I think it's the mission of defeat. I really don't think that at all. But I say again, I like the fact that he's prepared to do it. He is obviously quite thick-skinned because, yeah, I mean, I've seen both sides of social media. I'm very aware, on a much smaller scale, that there have been times in my career where I've had far too much praise, and certainly times I've had too much criticism as well. And you know, if you experience both, you sort of become immune to either, I think. So it might be that that's what's happened with him. Otherwise, you just go mad, or you go off social media. And you know, it's a tool of what I do, certainly. and he might feel the same thing, and he probably does some really good things over social media. You know, whatever you think of him, his dedication towards conservation and stuff, he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do that. So bloody good for him. It's like when people criticise Ian Botham, and obviously there's a lot to criticise Ian Botham for at times, fine. You know, he did raise all that money for charity. No one made it. A lot of people retire and don't do that. You know, so I'm full of respect for both of them, even if I don't agree with them all the time. But sorry, to get round to answering your question, there's no reason that just cutting things will make things better. If you're sort of arguing that you're distilling the talent, so you're picking the best, I don't know, 90 players out of the championship, okay, and you had a game tomorrow, a series tomorrow, okay, there's a little bit of logic in that. But what you're not doing is you're not then providing the developmental tools. You're not having people like Stuart Broad, who are given that great opportunity early in their career. James Taylor's another one. Rian Ahmed is a current example of people. I've named 3 players who I think will all play for Nottinghamshire or have played for Nottinghamshire, who started at Leicestershire, because they're getting game time, they're getting first-class cricket or professional cricket at an age where they probably wouldn't be getting it. And they're playing against good players, they're playing with good players, they're learning all the time. I know you might say you could do that in second 11 cricket, but it's not the same. It's not the same intensity. You don't get the same quality of players. It's not the same. It's different when it has first-class status, when it has this day status, whatever. So I just think it's a mistake to think that, look, quick solutions are the best solutions. It's like getting rich quick. God, that must be the best way to get rich. The only reason it's got a bad reputation is because it's simplistic. And it's the same with this. You know, just the idea, have fewer teams, we'll distill the talent. We won't. We'll find less talent. Instead, we should be urging, empowering the counties to get out in the community more and not rely just on the private schools in their region and find some more talent. We should be very interesting to watch. I think the last time I checked, I was watching the Saka school, South Asian Cricket Academy. They were playing against Northam second. They scored 400 or so on the first day. I think they bowled out 460. This is Saka. And the last time I looked, Northampton was something like 60 for 7. These are lads who slipped through the net in the Saka Academy. They slipped through the net for whatever reason, and they're now being given another go. And I think it's been proved that there's an awful lot of talent that we haven't optimized yet. And I would rather see us do that. I'd rather look at doing that than cut the number of teams to make it more exclusive. That is not the right way to go. There's all sorts of other things you can do. You know, if you don't like the blast, great, put it in 2 divisions. If you think it's too long, great, play over 100 balls. Couldn't give a toss, genuinely. Cricket, bloody love it, don't care. But I would like more teams to be playing at every level. And I just don't accept it's true that the amount of talent is finite. It's not in anything, is it? The amount of money in society is not finite. You get more out of things if you develop them, if you give them a chance, if you invest in them. And I think it's the same thing. So I think it's simplistic thinking, but I worry it's thinking that is winning the day. I worry that, I worry that we have people running English cricket who don't have much imagination and maybe not even vast amounts of intelligence, and that they've sort of lost faith in the product, it seems to me. But so many players come from the teams which would be cut. And I'm not sure that they would just go to other teams and be better. I think they might just be lost on the way. And there are you can think of lots of examples. You know, if you cut to 12 counties, okay, we can all think of 2 or 3 that would probably be the first to go. And let's be honest, Leicestershire, Northampton, Derby would all be in trouble. But that's quite a big area of the Midlands where you're losing teams. Yeah. Oh, sure. You've still got Warwickshire, sure. You've still got Nottinghamshire, I suppose. But then let's look at the others. Let's look at the others who would go. Sussex safe? Oh, Somerset? Somerset safe? Worcestershire safe? Well, they're not, are they? So you're going to be making some really, really big decisions. And you're not going to be making them on merit. Because you're going to decide, oh, test grounds, they'll be all right. So you're going to keep Glamorgan, who haven't produced, who aren't producing, haven't produced players. Maybe there's, a few signs of them going in the right direction now. It's not done on merit still. And there's so many things about franchises or smaller competitions. You'll end up selecting players because they're familiar rather than because they're good. Will that people be as willing to take chances on unknown players? I don't know. I think it'll be really, really difficult. Will they be willing to take chances on second-time rounders? People like Kevin, who actually missed out the first-time round. And there's loads of them. Jack Leach in the England side. Rory Burns, I think, went through the university system. You know, there's all sorts of people who come to the game at different times, different stages. I just think we're making our game smaller.
Graham Swan, that's another one.
Right. So all sorts of players. I mean, there literally are dozens. And we've already done this a bit. You know, I'm very nervous about the decision a couple of years ago to get rid of the MCCU scheme. You know, 25% of England qualified first-class cricketers were at some stage going through that scheme. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't have come through without it, but it was playing a part. And it wasn't just playing a part in producing cricketers with a slightly more rounded worldview, which I think is helpful. What it was really doing is helping at the other end of the system when they're spat out of the sport, age 32, with a dodgy back and, you know, rubbish hamstrings and don't have any jobs. And that is so much more of a problem, you know, than people realize, because we don't like to talk about these things because they're very personal, and we don't necessarily want to talk about our childhood heroes who's now homeless or whatever. But it happens. I can absolutely guarantee to you that it happens, and it doesn't happen that rarely. Anyway, I better not go into any more detail there. But the point being that I think that our game should be embracing more, not cutting and getting smaller. I don't think that's the way to go at all.
One of Kevin's points that he made about his proposed franchise, whatever you want to call it, his revamp of the county setup, was encouraging counties that apparently are flush with money to pay to get big name stars in to play red ball cricket. And that way, county players would, by playing alongside these great names, would then flourish in their own right.
Well, he's got a point. I mean, no doubt. He would have learnt by playing. Who did he play alongside? Chris Cairns, for example. Hussey, Fleming. I can't remember who would have played in those formative stages of his career. I mean, I think as a club cricketer, he would have played with Laurie Potter. No doubt he learnt from that as well, and all these things. No doubt that's true. You'll have more room to do that with more teams. And the idea that suddenly there's going to be space in the window and that money is going to be found to play first-class cricket when there are all these competing demands. The IPL is not going to go away. It might, you know, it's just got longer.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it get longer and longer? Yeah, but it's not just, I mean, you've got the CPL, you've got quite a lot of competitions which are encroaching ever more on the English season. It seems a bit nice. And then, of course, bilateral cricket, you know, Commonwealth Games, all sorts of things which could eat into English. It seems naive, again, simplistic, again, to think that you're suddenly going to be able to invest in these players who are going to come across. It does happen. Of course it does, you know. Ambler being an example, but before that, you know, Graham Smith. I mean, Surrey have done this for a few years, haven't they? They've basically had role model pros. But, you know, it's not as if most of the great players in international history haven't played in county cricket at some stage. You know, it used to be part of their finishing school, and it'd be lovely if it was again, no doubt about it. You know, Virat was meant to play, wasn't he, a couple of years ago? And will be hugely welcome if and when he wants to. So, you know, there's again logic in what he's saying up to a point, but it's simplistic to think that someone's going to say, okay, I'm going to invest millions of pounds in, you know, buying Worcestershire and getting these players to come across, because there'll always be a way that you can make money more easily than investing, I think, in first-class cricket. The county game isn't really about making money in itself. The county game is partly exists for its own ends, absolutely. It's an entertainment product. I love it. I'm not having to go with it. But it's also there to develop England players. And you can only really judge it and its success and its financial viability when you look at the whole of English cricket, because you can't just say to me that county cricket survives on handouts. Anyone who's still saying that is willfully ignorant at this stage. It is simplistic at best, but I would say willfully ignorant. It's a symbiotic relationship with the national side. England doesn't get to sell huge broadcast fees on the basis of the England side unless you've got a county system that's developing players. So therefore, the counties get rewarded for developing the players, which then are sold by the ECB in the broadcast bundle. That's how it works. Now, some counties are doing it better than others. You know, I can't pretend that's not true. Some counties do it brilliantly. Some counties are really struggling and have struggled historically. Maybe that could be looked at. Maybe 18 isn't the optimum number. Maybe it isn't. I do think that counties have to sing for their supper. But maybe 21 is the optimum number. Maybe there should be more. But the idea at the moment that there are these terribly simple, quick solutions, and that just cutting the numbers, finding investors who would, you know, do these things, it is, simplistic is one word, but actually it's slightly worrying as well. You know, if you sell these counties to investors, how long before they just say, you know what, it's a really difficult way to make a living. Why don't we build houses here? And that's been my worry about North Hants for a while. North Hants is run by people who are property developers. I believe they've had the covenant on the ground lifted. They've had the ground valued. They lied about it categorically when I ran a story about it 8 years ago or something like that. They had plans for another ground on the outskirts of town drawn up, and they didn't tell the truth about it. Now they do tell the truth about it now, and it's not an unreasonable thing to do, by the way, to move grounds. I think they were talking about building a ground with a roof. Brilliant ambition. But why lie about it? Mm-hmm. So my worry would be that as soon as you make money, the motivation, you're going to lose a lot of what makes county cricket very, very special. And I love the membership structure, which I think pervades at 15 of the 18 counties. And I think there's something wholesome and altruistic and long-sighted and selfless about it, that understands that actually what you're trying to do is create good teams and create good cricketers for England. And that's so much more rewarding than, you know, a dividend at the end of the share year.
Yeah, and I think also the danger for us as cricket lovers is the fact that you start doing things like this, you start creating franchises, you start turning them into profit and loss balance sheet run businesses. It doesn't take much to upset traditional cricket fans. That would absolutely alienate the people that are bristling about the 100 and don't dismiss the T20 as bish bash bosh. This would send them scurrying back into the shires.
Well, it might. I mean, I think that you know, a traditional cricket fan myself, I think that the problem is that you feel sort of disrespected. I think that the ECB could have taken people on the journey a lot better. I'm uncomfortable with the idea of county cricket fans as always traditional and change. I don't recognise that really. There might be an element of that from some, of course, but you know, List A cricket started in the English county game, you know, in 1963, and T20 started in the county game in 2000. There were lots of other ideas over the years which have started in the county game and have been welcomed and valued and cheered on by supporters. I just thought, actually, they called that bullshit when they saw it. I don't think it was sort of this reactionary refusal to accept change. I think people embrace change just fine, but when they smell a rat and they're wondering why things have been changed, and it all seems unnecessary, and then you realise that nearly everybody who speaks a good game about the 100 has been paid by the bloody 100. That's when you start to get really frustrated. So I'm still of the view that the 100 as cricket is kind of fine, you know, the competition. It has its positives, and there was something good there about trying to attract a new audience, but there's absolutely no reason at all that it couldn't have been done with the existing T20 teams and formula. Maybe you would want to go promotion relegation. I certainly would have done. But I suspect, you see, it was an attempt to reduce the number of teams by stealth. I still think that it was. I still think that's what's happening. It's the motive that dare not speak its name. And I don't particularly, you know, there are logical reasons for thinking there are too many teams. I don't agree, but it's possible. But I just wish there was a bit more honesty about it. Let's have the debate. And that's why I go back to KP. That's why I admire what he's saying and doing. I don't agree with him, but let's have the bloody debate. Let's have the debate in public rather than do what Colin Graves is trying to do, which is do it by stealth. He's been chair of the ECB, stands down, gets involved with a private equity company that is promoting franchise cricket in England. KP's doing it upfront and honest. Got nothing but respect for that.
Well, I urge everyone listening and watching to this to go and buy the July edition of the Cricketer. In fact, go one better than that and subscribe, because it doesn't cost a fortune.
Hey, look, on my Twitter feed, there is a special offer, which is unique to me. And I can't remember how much it is, but it's something like 40 quid a year. But for 30 issues, that genuinely, that is a bargain. So I think it's £41 a year for 13. I mean, that's quite good value. I know that. Who's got any money at the moment? We should see how much hotel rooms cost at the moment. But that's very kind of you to say, by the way. But you forget, because there's such a lag. I've already written my column for the issue following, so I would have written that KP piece quite a long time ago, and there would have been a few other pieces in between. But that's very kind of you, and thank you as ever for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
No, it's always great to talk to you, George. So everyone, 1, follow George on Twitter. 2, take up his bargain subscription, because I mean, not just you get the quality of George, but there's so many other fantastic contributors. It really, really is a superb publication, and if you love your cricket, it is an absolute must. And let us know what you think on George's Twitter, on our YouTube, whatever. Let us know what you think about what Kevin is putting forward, and what we've been talking about today, George and myself. What do you think of our discussion? It's a great debate, and as George says, we need to be talking out in the open about these things and really understand. And if views need to be challenged, then let's challenge them. If they need to be agreed with and encouraged, let's do the same. But either way, it's always a pleasure. George, many thanks for giving us your time. I know you're busy, and enjoy the Test match.
Brilliant. Really looking forward to it. Nice to talk.